Laurie Huston's News for the Heart is dedicated to helping you give a voice to your own soul. Our hearts have the power to free us from pain and the struggles that keep us from awakening to our true essence. Join Laurie now as we delve into our heart and soul to find the path that will open us to the possibilities and lead us to the life we love to live.
And good afternoon. This is News for the Heart. Well, we've taken a little bit of break. We're now back for the new fall. Okay, so it's also Mercury retrograde, and we will be supporting that last show that Tracy and I did, and putting it on the link of this show just so that people can go back to it, because it was a really profound show around kind of something that we never really even talked about with regards to Mercury retrograde before, something that was never even thought of. So welcome back to the show, Trace. Glad to have you.
Well, I'm glad to be back with you, not necessarily so glad to be back here in Toronto.
Right.
Glad to be back here with you.
Which kind of brings us to our topic, which is we're going to talk about seamlessness, and it started from a trip that Tracy took to Vancouver. Mm-hmm. So let's start there.
Yeah. So I just got back from an 8-day trip to Vancouver. And it was a very different trip to Vancouver that I had previously, like 10 years ago, when I literally flew into Vancouver to study and ended up in 14 hours of study per day times 5 days, coming out of that study in the dark. Weather horrible, never saw a mountain, never saw water. It just kind of went, Vancouver doesn't have any of these things, and flew back home.
Okay.
So here I am in a very different experience. And can assure you, Vancouver has mountains, many mountains. Yes. I saw the tops of many mountains. In fact, I had 6 days of Vancouver time of being able to see the tops of every single mountain that I wanted to look at, because there were no clouds, there was no fog, there was nothing. It was just extraordinary.
Nice.
So as one of the most profound things of this trip was seamlessness, the appreciation for the seamless way that things just seem to integrate themselves in that city. And there was a guide that we were speaking to one day who talked to us about the CN Rail and how important that CN Rail was at the beginning of the evolution of what Vancouver was going to become. And that the CN Rail had really had the ear of the government of that time, and really pressed for its own continued survival. And apparently, what we're told is that there are no freeways, there are no highways. I didn't see any evidence of freeways or highways anywhere around what is Vancouver proper. And that was absolutely part of the structure of Vancouver. What we did see is lots of streets that were wide. They were wide enough for cars, trucks. They were wide enough to have bike paths that were put right next to them, wide enough for widened sidewalks. I mean, you just looked at how the city had been constructed, and apparently with a vision that the CN Rail people held and the government chose to hold with them, which was a continued, seamless integration of other transportation methodologies, meaning cars and bikes and mopeds or whatever, all the craziness that we saw, all the strange unicycle things we saw on those bike paths, all having a place and all having space. And you had more than one car lane that was trying to get somewhere, like we're trying to do the crazy thing in Toronto of trying to create the bike lanes and all of these busy arteries of the city, and just creating a disaster as far as travel. And such a level, like even more constriction than we've ever seen. And so it was just an appreciation of not just seamless integration, but an appreciation of the visionary minds that were holding a space for not just the survival of themselves, but the continued thriving and building and growing of a place for people to live and be and have space to move around. It's impressive. It's impressive what they have pulled off in that city. You wonder too whether Disney had a little bit to do with this, in the sense that you've got the naming of the C bus, which your Compass Pass, which would be the equivalent of our Presto Pass, but oh boy, does theirs do a much better job. And you can take the C bus for the little price of $2.50. You can take the Sky Rail, which is their subway system. And at one point, the Sky Rail is no longer underground, and it now operates more like a monorail system above ground, and sometimes quite above ground. And on the one rail that we took, the one that we chose to take, it went directly, well, it had many stops for your $2.50. It had many stops, but then the last stop on that particular train landed you at the airport, like right at the airport. You had to stop to get off at the parking of the airport, and then you had to stop to get off for the actual airport itself. And literally you landed right in the airport, doors opened, and you were like a minute and a half away from being able to be right at the desk to be able to get your boarding pass, another minute to security. It was seamless for what I considered to be a much more reasonable price. So it was just this appreciation for visionary, the appreciation for how they wished for, I think, people's hearts to be, space for people's hearts, space for people to get around, space to embrace nature, space to be one with nature. Like they've done just a really, really good job. And then I came back here. Or I even think about coming back here. And I don't use the word seamless. I don't use the word integrated. I don't, it's just like we are not open. We are not with space. We are contracting more. We are suppressing more. We're not more integrated. Right. Maybe we have a more integrated system of technology to, quite honestly, a more integrated system of technology to be able to make sure you stop at the red light so that you're going to get fined, or keep your speed at 40 or you're going to get fined. Like it seems like we've done something a bit more seamless with regard to that. But as far as getting people places and helping them to feel comfortable in the place that they're in and happy and more joyful, and no, I think we get a failing grade. I think we get a failing grade. I think we've done a really poor job of dealing with our waterfront and being one with our waterfront and building it in a way that I think is good for the people of the city. I just think there are just a lot of things that I just don't see as having been done with that vision, right, of being just good for the people, like, all people. So then you and I are on this topic, and it's in my beingness, this appreciation for seamless integration. And I remember saying to you before I got on this call, well, Vancouver has gotten to me. It's gotten to me. It's impressed me. It's the people that designed it. They've impressed me. Okay, so a corporation had a lot of say in how that all got designed, but they did something right. They did something for more than just their interests and more than just the interests of their company. They had something else more, way more in their vision.
Right.
And I'm in this gratitude and appreciation for that. And so then I come back and we're having this conversation. I'm going, I want more. I want more. One of the things that happened from that trip is that I just went, wow, it escalated, it expanded the I want more. I want more for my life. I want more for my city. I want more for where I live. It's not a greedy I want more. It's a I want more. I wanna be with more breathing space. I wanna have more space. I wanna not feel so constricted and hemmed in. And I'm very grateful that we live in what was called the Upper Beach. You know, if you ever want to try and even remotely get somewhere else other than the Upper Beach, you get into the constrictions.
Yeah.
But at least you can feel a little bit like you've got some space, as long as you don't want to try to venture out from here. And that's part of what I say as far as there had been no seamless integration. Because venturing out from this lovely place called the beach where you do have some space, it's problematic just about everywhere you turn.
Yep. Very.
You're getting into these mass constrictions and craziness. So then I said to you, well, maybe that this is a representation of my body. You know, what I want. Maybe there are constrictions in my body where I want more seamlessness, where I want more seamless integration, and there is not seamless integration. So what would be my prayer then? What would be my desire then? That what I would want for this body, what I would want for my consciousness, what I would want for my beingness, for my wholeness, is more seamless integration within self. I want that. It feels so much better to have seamless integration when I'm in the presence of it in Vancouver. I came back here, and for the first time in 8 days, my teeth that I am having a little bit of a problem with, 2 of them in the back, 2 molars, started to hurt again and ache. And I went, what's that? I got on a plane, went over there, didn't use my water pick, didn't feel like I needed to use my water pick. Floss, did whatever. I had no pain. I had no ache. I had no pain. And literally, I'm back here. I'm not even landed from the plane. And I can feel the pain. The ache. The dull ache at the back of my mouth. And I'm going, what's that? That's amazing. That's amazing. Is this city making me ache? Is this it was wild. I wasn't even off the plane. I went, wow. So now I'm investigating this concept of seamless integration. I like it. It feels good. Feels good to be in a place out there in my vision where things are more seamlessly integrated, where they just work, they flow, where there's just flow. The bus systems and everything, they just seem to flow. It's just way more effortless. And one of the reasons is because they can get around better. They can just get around better. Everything can just be. More, do more, be more, get around better. Not be so hampered. Again, I go back to my body. I go back to my own consciousness. Where am I not seamlessly integrated? Where can I improve the seamless integration of me, mind, body, spirit, heart, and soul, that I so appreciated by being in that city? That I was so reminded, like big wake-up call, how much easier it is to live in the presence of more seamless integration. How much I like that. How much I want that. How much I want to go back there so I can have more of that. But I'm here. So what can I do? What can I do to bring more seamless integration into me? What can I repair? What is calling for my attention? Is there a real boulder in the way of seamless integration between my soul and my heart? Is there a big wall in between, a seamless integration between my spirit, my soul, my heart, my beingness, my body, my oneness? Is there a block in the seamless integration and working between the stomach and the liver? Is there a disruption in seamlessness of integration between my gallbladder and my liver, my gallbladder and my small intestine? And if there is, I want those blocks removed.
Definitely.
Because I want to flow better. Because I like what it feels like when things flow better. And I want that for my own body. I want that for my own beingness, heart, mind, soul. That I would flow better. I could point the finger. I could judge Toronto for being out of flow. I could do that. I could absolutely do that. It's so easy to point the finger and go, I am judging you, Toronto. I am judging the Council of 25 for everything that you have done to create more constriction here than flow. Except when it seems to flow money into your bank account with all the fines. I could point my finger at that very easily. But to be in a place of judge and judger is not seeing wide enough and high enough and far enough.
Yeah.
So if you've gotten to me, Toronto, because you are out of flow, if you've gotten to me, Toronto, because you are so constricted, if you've gotten to me, Toronto, because you are so poorly designed, and so badly envisioned, if all of that is where my judgments are, then you are a mirror.
Right.
If I'm ready to do that. So then I'm working with this person today. Again, seamless integration. This seems to be the thing in my field right now. And we're recognizing that there's a time frame at 3 where her brain isn't sitting in that seamless integration space. And her brain is assessing itself. Now, I originally, when this came in intuitively, I literally said to this client, I learned that the brain about 3 has this capacity to compare itself to others, to compare itself to other things. And it doesn't have that capacity until about the age of 3. So maybe this is what's going on. But I got a real interesting, it's like the brain's talking to me going, no. This isn't about me comparing myself to something else. The brain was very clear that the brain was assessing itself. It had nothing to do with comparing itself. And I'd never been in the presence of this before. I never actually even thought about the concept of the brain assessing itself. Her brain assessed itself at the age of 3 in whatever its capabilities were, and it came up with the assessment of slow to learn. And immediately upon accepting that assessment, we could feel the impact at heart. We could feel the constriction at heart. It was almost like certain things at heart they were not going to be easily accessible, findable. It's like things were being shut down, turned off. It's like it was very easy for us to feel and embody the negative impact that assessment of slow to learn was having on the heart. Mm-hmm. It was also quite easy to start to see that there were possibilities that were now no longer going to be available based on this brain's assessment of itself. Her highest way to be here, to experience her fullest life, was not accessible from that point. That the brain had decided and seen and assessed this way. Slow to learn.
Makes me think of 2 things. One, because there's always something. What reason the brain had to make an assessment like that? Like, what reason did it, instead of comparing, why did it go into a place of assessment? Because that seems interesting. Because, something usually causes ourselves to go into limitation and restriction and but also, we're just talking about the physical. We're not talking about the spirit. We're not talking about her connection. We're just talking about something that was very physical, that made a decision that impacted her for the rest of her conscious life or unconscious life.
Right.
Yeah.
And it did affect the unconscious. It did affect the unconscious when we started to look at it. And I love the fact that you bring this forward. Because remember, this was all new to me.
Right.
And I don't even know, if I connect, did the brain have yes, so the brain did have the ability to compare itself to others. You're right. It wasn't doing that. It had that ability to do that. It was stopped and doing this instead.
Right.
And it was wonderful for you to bring that up. Why? Why is the brain doing this? What has signaled this? What has brought this forward? Why would any brain? Because then I asked, well, is this always the brain? No, it's not always the way the brain works at all. It does have the capability, but no, it has. What I learned is that the brain will always assess the body. It will always assess the body at every breath in and every breath out.
Interesting.
And by the time we breathe in and we fully breathe out, the brain has assessed all of it. It's assessed all the fluids, all the cells. But this was like a micro assessment of itself.
Of itself, right.
And so when I sat here with you and we sat here together, I was kind of like, okay, that was a great, because you asked me, and I said, ask me that again when we're here. Because this is all new, right? And so when I sat with that, and I sat with the brain, and I sat with her brain, and I sat with all of it, some things fell in, and really, I'm only interested in truth. I'm interested in truth. I'm interested in connection to divine love, connection to divine light, connection to divine wisdom, connection to divine clarity, and connection to divine truth. That's it. Everything else can go somewhere else and be with somebody else. I'm just interested in these things and interested in clear connection to these things. So one of the things that came in was physical things, viruses, sick, illness, fevers, high fevers, right? These sorts of things would then, as the brain has had to endure these, it would have the brain questioning its capability. But one of the things that also came in, which was, I know you think, oh yeah, it's on everybody's consciousness, but I'm really trying to have it not on my consciousness. One of the things that came in was vaccinations. Not COVID vaccinations. No. And then other things that would be poisons coming into the body that could then impact the brain. Now, we have that blood-brain barrier, right? But there are things that can take that blood barrier down, like glyphosates. Like that's one of the big dangers of all this glyphosate, Roundup, pesticide, very specific chemicals that are being used on food, is they dissolve the blood-brain barrier, and so things get into the brain that are never supposed to be in the brain, ever. And I wouldn't know. I thought it was very interesting to have that fall in. It falls in, vaccinations. And I don't know whether there'd ever be a chemical that would be in any of the vaccinations from the past or the COVID vaccinations that are the ones that are now created. That even one chemical, one frequency having the ability to dissolve that blood-brain barrier or find its way through it. But something happened to her at 3. Something physical happened. A fever happened. A fever, a bad cold, a flu, a vaccination. Something happened that troubled the brain, that impacted the brain to the point where the brain had to stop and reassess itself. Reassess its capabilities. And it came up with slow to learn. And it's interesting as I do this, I go, okay, before that happened, so go back to, for this client, before this happened, I'm right with this client's energy right now. Before that happened, was the brain even questioning its ability to learn? No. Was the brain just sitting there in confidence, in good self-esteem? Like everything's got ego. Mind and body, no, but mind and body are both one, and everything has ego connecting to it. And was the brain questioning itself, questioning its capabilities, questioning its ability to learn, questioning its growth? No, it wasn't questioning any of it. It's all just humming along like a well-oiled machine. Did it know that it's evolving, that it's growing, that it's learning, that it's getting things? Yeah. That it's going to know more next week and excited about that, and right, yeah. Until something happens. So it's almost like it's like a ship. It's like a paddle wheel that's just going along and happily going along. until something happens that disrupts its very functioning to the point where it has to stop and reassess itself. Not the whole body, but reassess, a microscopic reassessment of itself. So this brain never saw itself as slow learner before. Never even thought about that. It's just learning. It's learning at its pace. It's learning at its pace. It's learning its pace. It's going along. It's going along. It's all good. It's going along. It's all happening. Growth is happening. It's all happening. It's all got a way of falling into place. It's all falling into place. It's almost like it's one. I never really thought about it, but it's one. It's seamlessly integrated with core. It's seamlessly integrated with core. Never thought about that, but that's the truth. So it's almost like it's one with that divine light within us. You know, it's one until it's not one.
Yeah.
Until something happens that disrupts that connectedness, that puts that offline, that gets us stopping and questioning, microscopically questioning that particular region.
That must happen during most traumas, though, right? Like that probably.
I would think so. I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think so.
So how many times has our brain stopped and reevaluated its abilities?
Right. And then when it reevaluated and assessed something that was less than the truth.
Right.
It's still, even its reassessment, it's still not back online. Because it didn't even know that it was offline.
Right.
And so one of the things that I was saying to the brain is really just helping the brain to kind of recognize, hey, you know, you were microscopically assessing yourself, but you weren't even coming from a place of recognizing that you are densely packed light. So you were not even recognizing the light within yourself.
I'd say it was because it was only 3, but I don't know if that's the difference.
But the brain had to concede to that. It
Right.
had to concede to the fact that it had assessed itself from the place where it was at, and it actually was recognizing that, no, it wasn't assessing itself from the quantum physics connectedness of information that we now have.
Right.
It was not assessing itself from that light level.
Yeah.
And it wasn't seeing its own light.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely wasn't recognizing that it was offline at that particular point from that light within, that it was this wonderful kind of palpable, beautiful seamlessness until this happened. And I think there are things that can take us offline.
Yeah.
They can just take us off. There's traumas that can take us offline. There's chemicals that can take us offline and take the brain offline.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great conversation to have, because then we can choose to be put back online again, which is what we were doing for this client. We were choosing that 3-year-old brain be brought back into the cycle, be brought back into seamless integration. That this had happened and it had interfered with seamless integration. And we wanted that seamless integration to come back, to be restored. Mm-hmm. And as we brought back that seamless integration, then we could also recognize that which we had brought back into our relationship, that divine light of us, that divine light of us does have the capability to transform things, dissolve things, move things.
Is it a decree then that we need?
Sorry?
Is it a decree that we need to sort of...
Well, decrees can be very helpful in the sense that I choose is a decree.
Right.
Right? I choose. I choose to be back online now. I choose that my 3-year-old brain would be brought back into online. Now, isn't that interesting that we're having this conversation during Mercury retrograde?
Yeah.
Right? Where we then have the potential to revisit these times in our life that are inner child times in our life when things went sideways, they went wrong, when we became the seamless integration of us might have been then disrupted by something. And so we didn't get informed by us. We ended up lost, or in this case, the brain ended up going on its own, assessing the situation and doing its best.
Right.
But what she really wants, this client, what she really wants from heart, she can't even access anymore because it's been so constricted and so closed off. What she really wants for her life, she can't have anymore because this assessment has done her out of that. So we were repairing all of that. Choosing, I choose. I choose to return back to myself, the life that I maybe was meant to live, but could no longer see the potential for, based on how my brain saw things. After blah, blah, blah. After the fever. After the COVID shot. After the smallpox shot. After I got slapped in the face by my father, who was my hero. After I got publicly humiliated by ... And I just think these things that impact us and deeply impact us, they take us offline. I don't know whether I want to say anymore that they take us off course, because it was very clear to me that she was still very much on course. But they sure did take her brain offline. And then had her living from the assessed place, trying to make the best of life from that assessed place, trying to make the best of life from the place where there was so much now at heart that couldn't be accessed for all the constrictions. Trying to do her best to take care of her mother, to take care of her father, to do what's right for them. To make the money to be able to live on her own, have her own life, be independent, stand on her own 2 feet. But always subconsciously in the background, that whisper of the assessment that said, you learn slowly. You are a slow learner. She's also a firstborn child. Firstborn child, natural born leaders. Natural born leaders by programming. Feeling overly responsible by programming until they get a real understanding of what their real responsibilities are. But where do you seamlessly integrate the slow learner with the natural born leader? And it was interesting to recognize that there was a program connected to that leader. And it was an old program of leadership. It was a patriarchal program of leadership. So it was very interesting to watch how all of this played out. Because it's almost like there was such a... This was supposed to happen this way at 3. It was supposed to happen, and it felt like it was going to happen for lots of people who were part of that patriarchal leadership piece. It was like it was going to take you down. The brain was going to assess you as less than, because there was such a high level of accessing and that was happening. I don't know how to describe it. It was like pretty much guaranteed that the brain, when this happened, was going to assess poorly the functioning of the brain, because these assessments were happening at such early ages. And then what do you do? And then what kind of a leader are you at that point? Are you fighting? Are you fighting for your place? Are you battling for your place? Are you just laying out and accepting it? Trying to make the best of where you are, just laying out and accepting it? Giving up? Walking away? Kind of like putting the leaders in those positions, taking away this really beautiful functioning of the brain in an online form and saying, well, what fabric are you? But it was very clear to see that she did not come here to be a leader from a patriarchal place. She did not come here at a core light level to lead in that way. She didn't come here to lead in a way where there's a winner and there's a loser. There's a winner and a whole bunch of losers, or a whole bunch of people that have a less than. She came here to lead in a way that was a win-win for everyone. How can we resolve these problems in ways that work for
everyone,
all of us? How can we do this? Now, we've been trying to do that in the schoolyards. Nobody gets a first place, second place. Everybody gets a ribbon. There are no losers. We've been trying to do it, but, just not coming from the right place. So that's what I mean when I say she was offline in brain connection to her core light self. But she was never out of the game. She was always in her game. It was like this firstborn child program was still growing her, but it was also hiding her. And now she's not to be hidden so much anymore. And now we're looking at seamless integration of divine self, connecting back to that 3-year-old brain, divine self back into connection with that brain. back into connection with that heart, back into connection with that gut. Seamless integration of all three of those master brains. Was she doing nothing all of this time? No. Was there a lot not working? Was there a lot that was continuing to send messages to her of, this isn't working, I'm not getting what I want, continuing to say, and the answer is yes. The universe is always supporting us, always showing us, always pointing. And it was also interesting to get that as the brain was coming back online in this seamless integration, that it was going to take a while to bring the heart back online in this seamless integration because of the constrictions. And so it was going to be almost like a 6 or 7 day process. But what we truly want, I don't think we ever really access what we truly want until we can get to these chambers in the heart. They say there are 9 of them, spiritual chambers, not the 4 that are the 4 real physical chambers, but that there are 9.
That sounds like a show for another time.
Yeah, I can't tell you much more about that, except that it felt right when I heard it. So, seamless integration of the brain that fell short, maybe at the age of 3, maybe at the age of 5, maybe at the age of 1. The brain that didn't get so well assessed, passing grade, so to speak, and what that threw off the table. Mm-hmm. And how that separated us from, a soul that could more beautifully integrate and us to embody that soul in this body, embody that spirit of us in this body. I thought it was a very powerful thing to see that the root of all of that could have come from a toxin, a fever, a virus, something physical that puts something offline, maybe at a very early age. But I will go back to say, it cannot change. It couldn't change for us until it could change, and it can change now. So I think it's why we can start to see these things now. How we did it, how we stayed hidden, what we used, what viruses we used, what fevers we used, what assessments from the brain we used to kind of ensure that we would stay small and never be the 2,000 watt light bulb plugged into the wrong socket. So it couldn't be another way until it can be another way, and it can be another way now. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
Because it's the truth.
Right.
It could not be another way. How can you blame anything at that point?
Right.
It could not be another way until it could be another way, and it can be another way now. And we can be a better version of human now. a version that knows itself, that knows that divine light within itself, that comes from that divine light within itself, that draws from the intelligence of that divine light within itself. We can be that version of human now.
Yeah.
And we don't need to interface with an artificial intelligence. We haven't even gotten to recognizing our own intelligence and our own connectedness to Source and what our own light knows and what our own light can do. And I think it's an interesting conversation to see what disruptors can interfere with connectedness and seamless connection.
Is there something we can request or ask for, or to make sure we're in a seamless interaction with ourselves, or is it?
Again, I think it's a choice. I think, when I've said it for a long time, this is in pain, this is in pain, intend that this area that is in pain be reconnected to your own core light. Recognize that because pain is here, probably it's a pretty good idea that there is no seamless integration of your core light to that area. So let's start there. Let's just start there. So if it's hurting, reconnect it. If it's hurting, intend that your core light be reestablished to that place. Almost like if you think of it as the lights of Manhattan. Like, sure, I could think of my core light as being a ball above my head. I could think of my core light as being a ball right at my abdomen, that it'd be this giant ball of light that I'm not seeing. I could also recognize my core light as being this giant meshwork that's everywhere. Just like my ego is a giant meshwork of mind that's everywhere. And yet in this space that's in pain, the lights have gone out.
Right.
The lights have gone out. In Manhattan there, well, I want those lights turned back on. That's what I want. I want those lights turned back on. I don't know what turned off those lights. I don't know what chemical that was. I don't know what vaccination that was. I don't know what trauma that was. But I want them turned back on.
Yeah.
And whatever the blocks are, obstacles are, remove them. That my light, my beautiful light that's everywhere like a meshwork, has the capability to do that and knows how to do that, knows how to remove these things, knows how to transmute. My brain, in a disconnected place from united connection, does not know how to transmute things. It does not know how to it doesn't know how to do that. But I know. But I know. That divine meshwork of me, that light knows. So it's also letting the brain, like letting all these brains know there's something more operating here than you, brain. There's something more that I want you to interface with, that I want you to be one with. And that more is me. Not something else, it's me. And my connection to source light. So it's intention. It's intention to remove the blocks. It's intention to release the obstacles. And so the more that your brain, this brain, gets that there's more than it, and is not resistant to working with more than it, and understands there's more to you than it, and is not afraid anymore to be with that more of you than it, and to work with that more than you than it, and to let that more than it work with you without it interfering, without it doing anything. The brain's just sitting back and observing, and then breathing and scanning and going, wow, this brain had nothing to do with this. And yet as I breathe and I scan, it's like all this stuff has shifted. There's all this flow. There's all this openness. There's all this, wow. Mm-hmm. And the brain, didn't do it. And yet it got done. Yeah. By her wholeness. And I am part of her wholeness. So intention is cool. It's a ton of this. It's choice and intention.
Yeah.
And an intention to recognize my wholeness, and to recognize, here I am in wholeness, like I am just a bubble of wholeness. I'm a bubble of wholeness. I'm like a cell of wholeness. And I'm part of this universe. I'm part of this world. I'm a cell of wholeness, and I'm part of something more than me. And I'm part of this universe, and I'm part of this cosmos. And I am securely held. And I am securely held. And this world is changing, and this world is rocking, and this world is shifting, and I am securely held. I am like a cell in this universe.
Yeah.
And I want to function to the best of my capability in my wholeness.
Nice.
And we function best when we are in alignment with our core light. And everything within us, all the fluids, all the blood, the fluids, the cells, the tissues, the everything is in alignment with our core light.
Okay.
And I think it's much easier to do that a lot of the time.
Yeah.
When the brain's happier not understanding so much and not needing to understand so much.
Nice.
Seamless integration.
Seamless integration. All right. Well, great show. You've been listening to News of the Heart. We've been getting the heart of what matters with Tracy McBurney and seamless integration. I think it's a good show. So also re-listen to the show on Mercury retrograde, because it's a really good episode. And we'll be back next month.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you, Laurie.